What are the roles and responsibilities or tasks performed by data engineers on cloud, be it AWS, Azure, Google, or any other cloud I'm going to cover in this video. We're also going to look at things like or services, common services that a data engineer should know, like Amazon S3, Lambda, EMR, data pipelines, Glue, Kinesis, Athena, SageMaker, and few other things from AWS. We'll also look at data-related services from Microsoft Azure, like Azure Data Factory, Synapse, Azure Databricks, Azure Stream Analytics, and Azure Machine Learning. Similarly, from Google, we're going to look at the common services related to data engineers on Google for Google Cloud, things like Firestore, Cloud Big Tables, the BigQuery, CloudProc, Dataflow, as well as Cloud Composer, BigQuery, and things like the machine learning on Google Cloud. So let me first tell you the context of this question, where it came from, and towards end, I'm also going to tell you about certifications if you want to do related to data engineers on things like AWS or Microsoft Azure Cloud. We'll talk that towards end. So let's first begin with what are things or roles and responsibilities or tasks performed, and we'll cover one by one. First on AWS, then Azure, and then on Google Cloud. So if you look at this document, and if you like this document, if you can comment it, if you like, I'll be happy to share this document below the video, or I'll put it under the description section of this video. So check it out. Also, the free class I was talking about and more about these certifications, I'll also put it under the description section below this video as well. Hi, my name is Atul from team K21 Academy, where we help you in learning cloud native, as well as data and everything around cloud as well. So first and most important thing is let's see what are the tasks performed by data engineers on cloud. As everything is moving towards cloud, we see more and more companies are implementing and using that data or implementing these data workflows, data pipelines on cloud as well. So the first and most important is that if you look at here, the tasks performed by data engineers are could be including things like migrating the data or moving the data from on-premise databases to the cloud environments. They're also setting up high availability and disaster recovery, as well as backup and restore from on-premise to cloud or from cloud to cloud as well, so that data is durable and available. So that brings me to the first definition is what is the durability actually means. And this is where I'm going to put notes as well, so that if you want to go a little bit deeper into the topic, you can further read and we can add. And if I'm telling anything in this video which you're not clear, leave it under comment section so we can reply and help you with answering that question. So from a durability point of view, durability refers the guarantee that once data is being successfully written to a storage system, it will be preserved and can be retrieved without loss of corruption or loss or corruption, even in the event of a hardware failure. So let's suppose you've written the data, once it's confirmed durable, then in case if any network issue happens, the storage or a hardware level issue happens, you are in a situation to recover that as well. And you can further read this. I'm not going to go deeper into this here right now. Now, so what are the roles and responsibilities of a data engineer within the AWS space? First is setting up the data storage. And for that, they use Amazon S3, where S3 is a service which is a simple storage service for a object storage type of file system. Now, there are three main categories of files or storage type or a data type, or not, I would say there's a block storage, there's an object storage, and a file storage. And then maybe if you want to read more or want to know more, let me know. I'll refer to some blogs that we have on our website, K21 Academy website, where I'll go deeper into that. But from a AWS point of view, you have S3, which is an object storage. Then you also have a block storage, which is an EBS, Elastic Block Storage, and EFS, which is a file storage service. But majority of time, as a data engineer, you'll be working on S3 to store your object storage, which is like, for example, your videos, backup and restore, backups, files, PDFs, documents. So document like this, which you will see are potentially stored in object storage. Then you also have Amazon RDS, which is a relational data services. And then, so another concept is there are two type of databases. One is a relational databases, which has tables in a format of rows and columns. which is also called as SQL store, which is a structured query language store. And then you have a NoSQL, which is a non-relational databases, which is a data stored in a free form, which we'll talk about later. So you have Amazon RDS for relational databases, and you have relational databases, one for example, Oracle, MySQL, Microsoft SQL, and a lot more, which we probably again I'll refer some additional notes inside this to talk about what all RDS services on AWS. So you'll be managing those. You'll be also doing another service which is called as Amazon DynamoDB, which is a databases for NoSQL or unstructured type of data. So there are three data types. One is structured data, semi-structured data, and a unstructured data. So DynamoDB will store NoSQL, unstructured and semi-structured type of databases. So these are the three services for data store you do as a AWS engineer. AWS data engineer better. Then you also do data processing, which means implementing the data workflows using AWS Lambda. So AWS Lambda is another service. So if you want to do it is serverless compute service. What is a compute? Your memory and CPU basically makes compute. And that could be a virtual machine, that could be containers, that could be Kubernetes, that could be a Lambda. Lambda is a serverless compute service on AWS. So without managing the infrastructure, without managing the servers, you run a code. So take an example of Alexa. You give a command, Alexa. So you build an application which will be using, for example, Lambda. In the simplest form, you give input A or B, A plus B, and it'll give you output, which is sum of A and B. So think of it as where you're not managing any underlying infrastructure. So that's Lambda. So implementing the data workflow using AWS Lambda, which is a serverless functions for serverless computing, as well as Amazon EMR. What is EMR? EMR is a Elastic Map Reduce. This is another service which is available on AWS, which is for a big data platform on or implementation of big data platform or big data platform on AWS cloud for huge amount of data, and which uses open source tools like Apache Hadoop, Apache Spark, HBase, Presto, Flink. We'll talk about these in subsequent videos. I don't want to go too deep into right now, but just want to focus on AWS. Cloud specific, but these are open source data things that you should be knowing, and maybe in my future episodes or future videos I'll cover these more concepts related to open source Apache, Hadoop, and big data solutions as well. So that's another part you do as a data engineer in AWS cloud, which is Amazon EMR. Then another thing you do is a data pipeline management. What is a data pipeline? If you want to understand what exactly is data pipeline, is a web services. That's another service on AWS. AWS data pipeline is a service that makes easier for end users or a business user or you as a data engineer or anyone who's using data to automate and movement and transfer of data services between AWS, compute, and storage. Now, what is compute? Your virtual machine, your containers, your Lambda functions, containers and Kubernetes, and so on. With that, as well as the storage services, which could be multiple, which we are seeing right now. For example, databases. For example, it could be the backend, big data, NoSQL, and so on, as well as on-premise data sources. So data pipeline is a service to move the data between compute as well as storage services as well as on-premise. It also using Glue, which is another service, which is a ETL, extract, transform, and load. So you extract the data, modify that as per the business requirement, and then load into another system, which is the ETL tools, which is very common, AWS Glue. So it's primarily for ETL tool to automate and manage your data workflows. So AWS data pipeline and Glue are both services within AWS, whereas data workflow is a process, it's a concept which is refers meaning of automated process of moving and transforming the data from one service location to another service. Now I know I speak fast, and so if I'm going fast, maybe slow it down, or if you think I'm going slow, maybe fast forward or move it quickly as well if you want. So data workflow is the process of moving and processing the data, which could be ETL or handling data extraction. All the things that you do with the data is the data workflow concept. So far, as a data engineer on AWS, you do data storage, you do data processing, you do data pipeline management, you also do big data analyst and analytics task. Again, you may not be doing all the tasks, but these are some of the roles and responsibilities of various roles on data on data related, which could be data analyst, data engineer, data scientist. These are the three main categories of data that you see. Now, from a big data analyst point of view, it leverages Amazon Redshift, which is another service. Amazon Redshift is another service for data warehouse related things or analytics services point of view. Redshift, I should have given a definition here as well. For data warehouse, it's self-explanatory. Redshift is a AWS service for data warehousing, and it basically uses Amazon Athena. So Amazon Athena is another service that you see, which is nothing but a interactive query service provided by AWS that makes easy to analyze the data without directly in S3 or using standard SQL. So let's suppose you have a S3, which is a object storage, and you have a data stored in that. The Athena provides a serverless query, which means you're not managing any hardware to run those queries. It just you run the query, and it will do those structured query language or SQLs against your data stored on your S3 buckets as well. So that's basically for querying the data S3 using SQL. So you do data analyst using data setting on Redshift, as well as data setting on S3 buckets as well. So that's another task you do. The another task you do as a data scientist may or may not do, but using machine learning. So use Amazon SageMaker, which is another service on AWS for developers and data scientists to build, train, and deploy your machine learning models that are available on for you. So that's what another task you do as a data scientist or data developers as well. So that these are main common services or tasks you do in AWS, but the similar task you do in other cloud as well. The tools might be slightly different, and that's what we're going to look at from on this first high-level document that we talk about. Now, as I said, if you stay till end, I'm going to talk about the certifications, including hands-on lab and the project work we recommend you to become a good data engineer on cloud with AWS or Azure in order to get a high-paying job, which we'll talk about towards end. Now, next is data or data engineer task on Azure cloud. Again, same thing. You have a data store and data management. Here you're implementing blob storage, which is again similar to object storage. On AWS, it's S3. In Azure, it's Azure blob storage that you see for unstructured data. So as I said, there is a structured data, unstructured data, and a semi-structured data. We'll talk about that in future videos as well if you want me to go deeper into those. Now, you also have Azure SQL databases as I said, SQL stands for Structured Query Language, as I said, for your managed relational databases. So you have Microsoft SQL Server, which is now implementation of that in a platform as a service model on Azure Cloud is Azure SQL Database. You also have Azure Cosmos DB, which is as a name or it's saying for NoSQL databases. So in AWS, we had DynamoDB for NoSQL. Here in Azure, we have Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. Here in AWS, you have Amazon RDS for relational databases. In Azure, you have Azure SQL database here. Now, the way we were doing, you also do ETL as a data engineer. Maybe you can be a data developer, data engineer, data scientist, but mainly for data developer and data engineer, you probably do data integrations and ETL, where ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. So you have a tool called Azure Data Factory, a tool I would say service, which is Azure Data Factory. Again, we have a whole big detail about what is Azure Data Factory, how to go build or how to create an Azure Data Factory ETL tools and step-by-step instructions. I think we'll refer in our blog on K21 Academy. So if you search on Google on K21 Academy Azure Data Factory, it will give you a step-by-step instructions. So Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based data integration service provided by Microsoft. It's a ETL tool, which is an extract, transform, load tool. I'm not going to go deeper again. You can read this here later. Now, it creates data-driven workflows for orchestrating and automating the data movement and transformation. So you have to move data. So for example, I have a data sitting in my ERPs, maybe Oracle ERP or SAP or Salesforce or somewhere else, and I want to bring them into a data lake or lake house, which we'll talk in future videos. So it for movement and transformation of those data. You also have big data and analytics. You have Azure Synapse, which was earlier used to be a SQL data warehouse. So we had a Redshift there in AWS. Here you have Synapse Analytics, which was earlier SQL data warehouse, mainly for big data analytics. You also have Azure Databricks. So what is Azure Databricks? So again, Azure Databricks is a analytical platform or implementation of Databricks on Microsoft Azure cloud. It basically based on Apache Spark. What is Apache Spark? We'll cover that as maybe I think its videos becoming bigger and bigger. So I'll do these, what is a data pipeline, glue, difference, Synapse, Azure Synapse. There are a lot of other interesting questions come. So I'll create them as a separate video separately. Maybe next video I'll do that. So it's based on Apache Spark. It's an open source distributed computing system for full analytic capabilities. So you have big data analytics for Azure Databricks, and you have Apache Spark based analytics as well available, or you do as a data developer or data analyst as well. You also do real-time analytics. So there is one is a data sitting, and you are multiple data coming and stored, and it's not changing that dynamically, maybe once in a day, maybe once in few days, or maybe once in a month. But you also have streams which is data constantly flowing and coming. So for example, your feeds coming, you just want to evaluate how Twitter, your reputation about your company is doing, and your constantly Twitter feeds coming, and you're analyzing data as processed. Or maybe for IoT things like Internet of Things device data coming from IoT devices, and you're analyzing the data on a regular basis. That's a stream analytics. So another service for or another task you do as a real-time analytics, which is a Azure Stream Analytics. Now, I want to reiterate that data engineer may not do all the tasks, maybe an analyst will do, but data engineers will build the platforms and keep things happening and running, maybe for data scientists, data developers, data analysts, or business and so on, and making that data is cleaned as well, data architects. So that's the role of data engineers. So coming back to Azure Stream Analytics is a fully managed real-time analytics provided by Azure, Microsoft Azure, but this service is particularly useful for scenarios including IoT devices, streams, web clicks, social media feeds, and other type of fast-moving data. So I hope you understand now streaming on this. Uh, Next task is a machine learning and AI. So the Azure Machine Learning, there's another service like in AWS, we have SageMaker. In Azure, you have a Azure Machine Learning, which is a cloud-based machine learning platform provided to build, deploy, train, and manage models at a scale. Now, these models will need underlying processing, which you might use again, virtual machines, containers, Kubernetes. We'll talk about that in future videos as well. So this is again similar thing, but on a Microsoft Azure platform. Now, I must say that when I started a decade back on cloud, I started with first Oracle, but Oracle is not there. Maybe I'll in future, you might say, hey, you being an Oracle DBA, I started my career as an Oracle. So I'm probably just realized I'm missing Oracle. I'll add next time as well. But I started with multi-cloud. We started with first AWS and then Azure and then Google. So you'll see this is the order which I'm placing these things as well. Oh yeah, so let's, I think I'm distracted a little bit therefore. So let's look at the third and the final in today about the role of a data engineer in Google Cloud, which I think I forgot. I need to also talk about the certification and the hands-on labs, which I'll talk about before forgetting. So you have the Google Cloud, and Google Cloud, you have again data storage. So Google has a Google Cloud Storage for object storage. So you have a Google Cloud Storage like S3 in AWS, a Blob in Azure. You have a Google Cloud Storage on object storage for object storage. You also have a Cloud SQL database similar to your relational databases in AWS. You have RDS. In Azure, you have Azure SQL database. Here you have Cloud SQL for relational database. But then you also have Firestore or cloud big table for NoSQL options. And this is something which we were doing and implementing Azure, I realized some things these were you need to know or at least have an idea about what is Firestore and what is cloud big table. These are for NoSQL databases. So implementation of those solutions in AWS was we saw that was DynamoDB. In Microsoft Azure, you had Azure Cosmos DB. Similar to that, you have here in Google, you have Firestore, which is a NoSQL database for storing data in a documents which are organized into collections. Again, you can read it further. Firestore was originally known or it was built for the solutions for or scalable databases for mobile devices or mobile applications, web applications, as well as the development. They had a different project called Firebase, so maybe worth reading in that. I want to focus and stay because I said video is getting bigger and bigger. I thought of adding these. So basically, Google had a separate project for developing web applications, iOS devices, their Android devices and web applications and so on. So to maintain the database, they created this Firebase as a project and the databases for that. You also have Cloud Bigtable, which is a fully managed NoSQL databases offered by Google for that. Again, for mainly for data intensive analytics, IoT, data processing, and machine learning. All those things you have a NoSQL database, which is a Cloud Bigtable. Now, from a data processing point of view, you implement data pipelines, but using Cloud Data Flow. Now, why I'm talking all this and why it's good to know about these things is because when you go for interviews, you might be asked, hey, have you done, at least you should have an understanding and say, I know enough about it, but I can learn and pick up, because once you know one tool or one implementation, one cloud, implementation of that same on other cloud becomes very, very easy. So what is Cloud Data Flow? Cloud Data Flow is a fully managed serverless service provided by Google Cloud or on Google Cloud for data processing. Something similar what you saw earlier on Lambda on AWS and so on. So Cloud Data Flow is both for stream as well as batch data. What is batch data? Stream we looked at earlier, but batch is where you're doing maybe a monthly report or a weekly report or a daily report for that kind of a processing. It also, you have a Cloud Data Proc, which is a fully managed service again for on GCP or Google Cloud for processing the big data using open source tools like Apache Hadoop, Hive, Spark, Pig, HBase, all those things. What are those? We'll cover that in future videos as well. So of course, Cloud Proc for Apache Spark and Hadoop based clusters. What is Apache Spark? What is Hadoop clusters? We'll see that later. Now, you also do data orchestration, which is a movement and how do you do end-to-end processing of or orchestration using tools like Cloud Composer. So Cloud Composer is another service from Google Cloud for managed workflow orchestration built on Apache Airflow offered. So what is Airflow? We'll talk about that as well. Let's look at where this is, what this Airflow is here. So it's Apache Airflow is an open source platform programmatically authored and to monitor the workflows. Again, to reiterate, it's a workflow authoring and scheduling and monitoring the workflows or data related workflows developed by Airbnb initially and then donated to the open source community. So it's basically scheduling and monitoring for data pipelines as well. Again, data pipeline is something which we're going to go deeper in future videos. It also uses, or as a part of on Google Cloud, another thing you should be knowing is a BigQuery, which is for your fully managed serverless, highly scalable data warehouse. It's mainly for a data warehouse solutions. BigQuery is, but it's a serverless, which means you're not managing the servers. And the way you had Redshift in AWS, here you have BigQuery on here for data warehouse analysis as well. Now, and the last and final part was about AI and machine learning on Google Cloud. So they have a play or a service to build, manage, and train your machine learning models similar to what you have in AWS and Azure as well. And it uses TensorFlow. which is another thing you should be knowing. So what is a TensorFlow? It's an open source machine learning framework developed by Google Brain, a team. Google Brain team is a separate team mainly focused on AI, machine learning, data scientists as well, models as well. So it's an AI platform for that uses TensorFlow on Google Cloud for deploying machine learning models, managing, deploying, training the machine learning model. So that's pretty much on for these three, which, as I said, before we go forward, I wanted to tell you about this data engineering certification on AWS Cloud. So I think on March or yeah, March first week of late 2023, AWS announced that they are closing down two certifications, which was AWS Data Analytics and AWS Databases. Instead of that, they introduced in late 2023 the Azure, sorry, AWS Data Engineer certification. And in on March first week, or I think March 12th, they went live with AWS data engineering certification. So if you want to know more about this uh, AWS data engineering certification, this is you can check out by going to k21academy.com/AWS data 11. Everything about a data engineering certification that you want to know. I highly recommend if you're working on data for AWS. It's a multiple choice questions, which we'll talk about these certifications maybe later. So I don't want to go to just AWS data 11. Now, also, if you want to become a good data engineer, the best thing you should be doing is doing the hands-on labs and the project work. So hands-on lab and project work, what all hands-on lab you should be doing and what all project work you should be doing, right from the basic services to ingestion and changeover of data. How do you move the data? Management of data stores, data support, and sorry, I think it should be AWS Data 05, right? So that's AWS Data 11, yeah. So this is when you go to AWS Data 05, you can see all the list of hands-on lab you should be doing in order to understand the data services end to end, right from data governance, support, security, and you should do a couple of data projects, real-time project as well. So that's AWS. Similar to that, at the time of recording this, Microsoft Azure has a Microsoft Azure Data Engineer certification, which is DP203. Earlier, it used to be DP2 certifications, so DP201, 200, 200 and 201, yeah, 200 and 201, or 201 and 202, I don't remember exactly, but I think 200 and 201. They built now a single certification for both data engineer, data architects, which is DP203 data engineering. So if you want to read more about this certification, you can check and go to k21academy.com/Azure Data 11, which will talk about everything about this certification, how to prepare. Highly recommend you if you really want to go and focus more on a data engineering on Microsoft Azure. And then finally, similar, the list of hands-on labs you should be doing in order to become a good data engineer on Microsoft Azure Cloud, which is k21academy.com/Azure Data 05. That will list on all the hands-on lab. I probably might break it down to a different part that also includes, this also includes all the three roles, which is a data engineer, data scientist, and data analytics. I probably might be breaking down into these different parts on this. So by the time you're watching this, we might have revised or it's going to come soon, these different categories, the way we have done in AWS here as well. So that's on data engineering, pretty much on first Atul talking about the data common task, roles and responsibilities performed by data engineers on AWS Cloud, some of the services that you should be knowing. Now, in my future episode, some of the common questions which I myself had, what's the difference between AWS Glue and AWS Data Pipeline? In which one should I use? Similarly, what's the difference between Azure Synapse Analytics as well as Azure Stream Analytics? Or maybe what's difference, what these are Apache open source data related services like Hadoop, Spark, HBase, Pig, Hive, and so on. And as I get more and more questions, I'm going to go more and more, share more and more content. I'm hoping to create a weekly basis content on this, on data, on cloud. Let me know what topics you want to hear or want me to cover. I would like to answer or do more on what you want rather than what I think I should be doing. I'll do some of mix of those, but let me know. Also give me feedback. As I said, I used to do a lot of these videos and blog, but since building K21 Academy, I now I have a lot of time. I have a big team now, and we are doing pretty good. So I thought probably I'll start focusing back on the things that I enjoy most, which is about creating some useful content which you can add value, which can add value to your skill set as well. So let me know about that as well, and give me a feedback if you like and enjoy. Don't forget to share this video, and yeah, do subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And with that, this is Atul from Team K21 Academy signing off now, but I'll come back with a more interesting question or answers and topics related to data on cloud, or any other topic that you want me to cover. Just let me know. And I would love the questions, and I'll see and go through the questions as like on comment section, so to see what content I need to produce next. Take care and bye for now. Thank you.